Good afternoon, everyone. We'll begin with the session one for the day, based on the theme Archaeology, History and Art of the Magadh region. And I would like to invite our first speaker for today, Dr. Elora Tribedi, Assistant Professor at Nalanda University. She'll be speaking on En route Buddha Kshetra, Pilgrimage and Fluid Spaces in the Land of Enlightenment. Just a brief about her. Dr. Tribedi is a field archaeologist and assistant professor at Nalanda University with specialization in scriptures of South and Southeast Asia. Her research looks into the archaeology of religion and rituals, sacred landscape, archaeology of Buddhist practices and cults, iconography, debates in historical and early medieval archaeology, making, unmaking, and remaking of heritage. She has traveled and extensively explored Buddhist monuments, archaeological sites, and places of heritage in India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Cambodia, and China. She has previously taught at the Northeastern Hill University, Meghalaya, Vishwa Bharati University, West Bengal, Postgraduate Department of History, University of Delhi, and has participated and supervised work in several excavations with Indian and international teams. Welcome.
Thank you.
Display.
Namaskar and good afternoon to all dignitaries and also to Professor Jaiswal and all audience who is present here. As the kind moderator said, that I'm Dr. Elora Tribedi, Assistant Professor, Nalanda University, and I'm very pleased to give the lead presentation for the first session, Archaeology, History and Art of Magadh region. And I thank the organizers of Bodh Gaya Global Dialogues, as well as my university organizers. So, Magadh, South Bihar, for instance, if we don't just only talk about South Bihar, but rather Bihar, or in a greater sense, India, Bharat, is often called as the land of Buddha. From the pen of Mayank Krishna, who has, I would take the liberty just to, for a few seconds to say, who has written a very beautiful poem called I Am Bihar. Namaskar, sir. Mayank Krishna has written a beautiful poem, I Am Bihar. He has written, I am the history of India. I nourished Buddha to enlightenment. I gave Ashoka Chakra that adorns India's national flag. I am the past, I am the future, I am heritage, I am intellectual, I am farmer, I am freedom, I am destiny, I am Bihar. Come with your dream, I will make it a reality. So, the earliest reference for pilgrimage, as you can see from my talk, I'll be mostly talking about Buddhist pilgrimage. The earliest reference to pilgrimage can be found in the Rig Veda and in the later 5th, 6th century Puranic literature, which records tirthas or holy crossing of places and localities of pilgrimage destination. Epigraphy, on the other hand, tells us about Mauryan Emperor Ashok, such as the Lumbini Pillar inscription commemorates the first pilgrimage taken by Ashoka in his personal verse, because of the Lord Buddha was born in this place. He came in person and paid reverence. He also exempted the village of Lumbini from taxes and granted its share. So, we can say that pilgrimage can mean reliving the idea of self, or rather, it's a cyclic action of journey forward and backward, involved in generating a state of elation excitement, and gratification. As I said, that pilgrimage can also mean reliving the idea of self in an already instructed, preached, or experienced place. In one hand, as pilgrimage includes donating or making or possessing of objects, on the other hand, seeing is a very crucial aspect about pilgrimage. So, pilgrimage, of course, include practices, but many of these practices are intangible. For example, seeing, or venerating, or worshipping. Not necessarily they can leave tangible remains, but we archaeologists often search for tangible remains, but in a greater sense of this intangible significance. Now, defining the other term, Buddha Kshetra, which I have used in my paper, we all know of the ancient Buddhist pilgrimage network. And we have recurrent references of Ashtamahasthana, 8 great pilgrimage places in Madhya Desha, or the middle part of India, in different kind of literature. If we look into, again, Bihar, or particularly the whole present day of Bihar, we have 3 of those Ashtamahasthana within the present day of Bihar: Bodh Gaya, Rajgriha, and Vaishali. Within the South Bihar, Magadh, its importance is in the well-connected path that we can see which ran between Bodh Gaya, Rajgriha, or Vaishali. So, coming to Bodh Gaya, I will come to Bodh Gaya in a sense that Bodh Gaya is a seat of enlightenment of Buddha, emerged as a prominent pilgrimage center between 5th century BC to the 1st century BC, with several cases of pilgrimage and patronage, and a sacred landscape, as we all know. A sacred landscape developed consisting the Bodhi city by the 5th to 1st century BC, the Bodhi sit under the Bodhi tree, the jeweled walk, and surrounded by 64 railing pillars, which later extended and elaborated in the following centuries, which somehow generated the idea, most importantly, of what I mean to say as Buddha Kshetra. Later, we also find from Bodh Gaya gold coins of Hubishka, or the inscription of Mahanaman, which talks about the construction, which also refer to the construction of the Mahabodhi temple. And later on, multiple accounts of the Chinese pilgrims or pilgrimage from the Burma, as well as different parts of East Asia, Korea, and China, which tells us how Bodh Gaya developed as the Buddha Kshetra. So we find in the Lalita Vistara reference to Bodh Gaya as the seat of enlightenment. Bodh Gaya was mentioned as the Buddha Kshetra only of Gautama Buddha. But I am not only talking about that, the term Buddha Kshetra in that narrower sense. I want to bring in this idea that the worship of Buddha in the centuries from 5th century BC to till present day was never limited to the Bodhi tree or the Vajrasana. We have the archaeological site of Taradi with monastery, the Bakror Stupa, the monastic remains at Pragbodhi or Dungeshwari, or for example, the Pretshila Hills. All of these locations near to Bodh Gaya were somehow connected with, or connecting dots with Buddha's life, which the visiting pilgrims, of course, made sense of. Hence, Buddha Kshetra was imagined, planned, and developed by the Sangha. This new reconceptualization of Buddha became a basis. Are we done with this? Thank you. This new re-envisioning of this concept of the Buddha Kshetra created a sacred landscape. I want to come back to the address that we talked about, that sacred landscape is not just the site. Ashmore also has said that sacred landscapes is a combination of the whole. We'll get into this idea. So what I want to take you away from this part of Buddha Kshetra is, when we're talking about Bodh Gaya, we only look at the Mahabodhi temple, or the Bodhi tree, or the Vajrasana, maximum to the Muchilinda lake. But we have clear references that throughout the historical period, the Buddha Kshetra included, of course, the Bakror Stupa or the Sujata Stupa, or Buddha's life event which took place possibly at the Dungeshwari hill, or his interaction with the groups on the Pretshila hills. So, I mean to say that we should not forget that this entire region was Buddha Kshetra at one point. Now, coming to the tangible and the material remains of pilgrimage, Alexander Cunningham, for example, has suggested that the hundreds and thousands of small baked and unbaked cave stupas were found during renovation of Mahabodhi temple. Similarly, we all know of a very famous paper by John Guy, who has talked about the miniature models of the Mahabodhi temples, which has been interpreted as pilgrimage souvenirs, and find spot of those miniature Mahabodhi temple across Asia have been considered as evidence of pilgrimage by different actors and networks with South Asia and different parts of Asia. But there is a dilemma here that I want to present. Of course, we are coming from archaeology and art history. To understand the signature of the pilgrims, is it enough only to look at the small miniature stupas or the votive stupas and only understand that they have left some signature? As we have progressed in our academia, it is now time that we also look into something more essential, something more core within the experience of these pilgrims. I would like to highlight from many examples. There are many examples of such, but I just want to give one example of this very interesting inscribed stela by a Chinese monk, Unshu, much lesser known. So Unshu came in the 11th century to Bodh Gaya, like many other monks and pilgrims who visited Bodh Gaya as the navel of the earth or Vajrasana. He donated a small stupa for gaining merit, which had 1,000 images of Buddha, but at the same time he contributed for making this inscribed stela. He possibly didn't have Chinese artisans with him because he was just a monk. He employed local artisans to inscribe a stela, giving them a paint possibly of the Chinese inscription, expressing his admiration for this sacred zone of Mahabodhi temple as well as the Bodh Gaya. So what we can take away from this? Why I brought this example? I want to highlight that it is not only about the tangibility of the pilgrimage souvenirs. What we should be looking into is the motivation behind the erection of the monuments or leaving of sub-signatures. We should question, why did Unshu choose to leave an inscribed stela at Bodh Gaya? Was it for the Chinese pilgrims who are supposed to follow him? Or was it to show that he was one of the many Asian pilgrims who visited this very important place? So I mean to say, let us now move more to experiences which are connected through this very important act of pilgrimage, not externally, but within, internally rather. So, coming from Bodh Gaya, I would say that, coming back to this map again, that movements and gathering of people at places like Bodh Gaya created something interesting. Monuments, Mahabodhi temple or the Vajrasana, we often look at them as static monuments in spaces. But these monuments or these objects only make meaningful sense in connection to their interactions with the pilgrims and the travelers. What I mean to say that monuments are not static, but interacted and come alive with human engagement and interaction. In space allocations, merit is involved. So we can say that not only Bodh Gaya, pilgrimage locations such as Bodh Gaya, Rajgir or Nalanda were not merely connected or static buildings or monuments, they formed a dynamic interactions between tangible and intangible practices. In these cases, the network of the sites come in front of us, which is very, very crucial. We often talk about archaeological sites and monuments. What we forget are the temporary spaces within a pilgrimage network. I mean to say non-permanent or seasonal structures. How, if we look into only Bodh Gaya, Rajgir and Vaishali, what we'll be missing is this vast network of many more Buddhist sites, which are not actually tirthas, but they expanded and grew. Why? Because possibly they were also in between locations within this broader pilgrimage network. And the archaeological or tangible signatures of pilgrimage are very critical and very crucial to look from these locations. For example, Giriyak, one of the nearest place. Rajgir, of course, is going to be discussed. I'm skipping Rajgir. But I want to say that why did we need the Giriyak stupa? Was it a marker? Why did we need the whole dotted Buddha valley of Yashtivan, Tapovan between Rajgir to Gaya? What are the importance of these places? I want to bring into the idea that these were positioned within the networks of the pilgrimage. For example, from Giriyak, we have found this very interesting clay ceiling, which not only shows a very important stupa, possibly denoting an other smaller 8 stupas, possibly 7 stupas, creating the Ashta Mahasthana idea, which is possibly a very interesting indication of the pilgrimage. Or Dharaud, for example, where we have also many interesting archaeological, of course, object and tangible object to shows that how this idea of pilgrimage or the Mahabodhi temple was being generated, how it was being circulated. So pilgrimage, population affects the landscape that they move through. It is not just spontaneously happen that sites come into being. I'm skipping many sites, but another site is far towards the eastern part of Bihar. A site which is very lesser known, or Bridaban, where also we find similar kind of ceilings, generating and circulating this idea of the Buddhist pilgrimage of Magadh or Bihar in that sense. So, in 3 minutes. Okay. So now we come to the idea about pilgrimage as fluid spaces, to connect it with the idea of pilgrimage not only located in the landscape in reality, but also existing in the mind of people. It is very much connected with the non-mobility aspect also. How many people in ancient times could visit Bodh Gaya, Rajgir or Vaishali, and how many could not? So what about those people? I think Nalanda has greater importance, but one of the most crucial contribution of Nalanda was the development of the iconography of Ashtamaha Pratiharya within the same stela of Buddha. Coming from Jagjivanpur, this iconography became so massively popular that almost all of the early medieval Buddhist monastic sites imported this iconography. You might think that this is just about the life scenes of Buddha. But I would like to say that this were very crucial evidence for pilgrimage and pilgrimage location in fluid sense. Pilgrimage came to be denoted not only in the location anymore, they came to be represented in the mind of people through iconographies such as these. So making an image of Buddha with the 8 important places also generated merit possibly in a similar sense of the merit for pilgrimage. And this became very popular in different parts of the Buddhist world, particularly from Pagan or different parts of Burma as well as in Malaysia. And also in the Himalayan countries, it has a very different ways. Those who could not travel, there was this concept of virtual pilgrimage where you can clearly see that Chorten or the smaller stupas were constructed commemorating each smaller locations for this pilgrimage network. So summing up, I would like to say that what I wanted to communicate from my presentation is that pilgrimage is not only about arriving to tirthas. Pilgrimage has been always about journeying and revisiting. Whereas donating, marking, or possessing of objects were important, seeing, whether in a physical mode or virtually, through image and iconographies of Buddhas, were also important. And pilgrimage is not a fixed or a static reality. It was fluid entities connected through emotions. I want to end my talk by bringing a very interesting aspects about where we are headed with heritage and pilgrimage sites. Since 2500 Buddha Jayanti, we all know Bodh Gaya has been very crucial to foster government of India's connection with different parts of Southeast Asian countries. Bihar has been branded as blissful Bihar. If you see in the logo of Bihar tourism, you will see the people tree, which is a very interesting aesthetic choice for rebandering the rich Buddhist cultural heritage. But heritage has both sides also. Heritage is not only about pilgrimage. There is, of course, an increase in our economy because of this Buddhist pilgrimage. But heritage should be approached more carefully, looking into further, as Seth said, into the further resonance of welfare of a holistic community, not just only people involved with the monuments. Thank you very much. Just close this.
Thank you, Dr. Tribedi, for navigating us through the sacred lands and ancient teachings and the fluid spaces in the land of enlightenment. I would now call upon Dr. Shashank Sekhar Sinha, independent researcher and author and publishing director, Archaeology South Asia, currently completing a book on the monumental history of Buddhism in India. He'll be speaking on the Mahavihara and its wider Buddhist connections of lesser-known structures, artifacts, and legacies of Nalanda. Dr. Sinha is an independent researcher, author, and a publisher. He has been working as publishing director in Archaeology South Asia since 2012. Earlier, he taught history at undergraduate colleges in the University of Delhi for almost a decade and worked with Oxford University Press. He has been on key researcher and higher education committees of India, institutions or journals like Indian Council of Social Sciences Research, Indian Council for Historical Research, and the journal Economic and Political Weekly. He publishes regularly in the academic journals and books on areas related to tribes, gender, violence, witch hunting, heritage, and popular culture. He also writes for popular media platforms and features in television programs and newspaper stories in areas related to his research. I welcome you, sir. You'll have 12 minutes of time.
I think it's already good afternoon. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Surbi. Thank you, Alara, for setting the tone. I realize that some of the images I am not able to carry, you were carrying that. So thank you so much. Thank you, Deshkal and Nalanda International University for giving me this platform to share my findings. In the last 4-5 years, I've been working in the domain of public history. So how history is constituted in the public sphere has been one of my key areas of concern, basically. And that's what I've been doing through lots of writings, through a series of books on monuments, and I'm doing it through monuments, right? So when we talk about Nalanda in the public domain, there are 2 or 3 things which become very, very apparent or very dominant. One is, of course, that it is a university, right? 2 is about, travels of Hoensang, that the Chinese monks were traveling into this region. And third is, another one which we know that, it was destroyed by the Turks, the Afghans. So these are the ways in which, but when you apply a wider archaeological, historical, and a geocultural context, Nalanda has much, much more to offer. And this is what I'm going to talk about. And I, like Bodh Gaya, last time at the Bodh Gaya dialogues, I used 7 frames, to talk about how Bodh Gaya has a larger setting, not just Bodh Gaya temple or the Mahabodhi temple as well. And today I'm going to use the same, thing about these 7 frames, which do not give a comprehensive picture. But the time is very short, so I'll just try to, they do not give a comprehensive picture, but what they will give you certainly is a very fascinating possibilities that Nalanda has to offer. And I begin with the first one, my first frame, which is the entry frame, which is the basic frame, right? Which is that Nalanda represents a different conceptualization, a different architecture, and a different function of a monastery. We have understood monastery. So they began with the kind of rain retreats during Buddha's times. Then they started acquiring a structure. Then they became permanent monasteries. They came up as independent structures, either in the wider Buddhist landscapes or as in the caves, basically. And then they became like in, Gandhara, part of the stupa monastery complexes or the wider monastery complexes. By Nalanda's time, by Gupta's time, and what Nalanda begins is basically, and this is what is also described as, while we talk about, it as a university, the term that the contemporary sources use is a Mahavihara. And this Mahavihara had a different role, function, architecture. So what happens is that by the time we reach Nalanda, the whole idea of Mahavihara has become an aggregation of monasteries. So it's an aggregation or a confederation of monastery that has happened. In terms of architecture, there has been a drastic change as well. So when you look at monasteries of the preceding period, normally you see them very utilitarian, very austere, very utilitarian. Nalanda comes at a time when it becomes bigger, the structure becomes bigger. There is a lot of rich in documentation, rich in ornamentation, both inside and outside. So if you look at, caves like, Ajanta, they are profusely painted by sculpture or painted things, basically. And the third part is also, which is a very characteristic of Gupta times in which it took its concrete shape, is the idea of towers. Monastery having towers or shikharas, right? Which you also see in the Bodh Gaya temple, basically. And there were some in Sarnath, which Hoensang saw, but we don't find remains of that. So that is the second part in terms of architecture. And the third part was that it was no longer functioning as a radiation center for Buddhism, right? In the sense that it was no longer traditional vihara. It had become a site of higher learning. It had become a site of higher learning. It was not just limited to the Buddhist monks, right? So it is a monastic come educational, establishment. And that brings me to my second frame. And my second frame, deals with the conceptualization of the individual monasteries between 5th to 14th centuries. And I have borrowed them, I see how they are described in the inscriptions of this place, right? So what you see is that as soon as you enter any of those monastical, you can see the remains only now, but as you enter the individual monasteries, what you see is right opposite the entrance, which is in the back wall, you see a small cell, a cell which is larger than the other cells, right? And that has an image of Buddha. Now, what is that signifies? This kind of a structure is also seen in Shravasti, Anathapindika monastery, and also Kalyan Bhadra in near Banaras, basically. Now, what does it signify? The term that the inscription uses, Gandhakuti, or perfumed chambers. Now, these chambers were meant to be chambers for the Buddha. But like in the earlier monasteries, which you see like in Shravasti or Banaras, the description is that the room occupied by the Buddha. But when you come to Nalanda, when you come to Ajanta, or when you come to Bagh caves, the description that the inscription use is the Buddha's private chamber. Now, what does this mean? And what do the inscriptions further indicate? It means that Buddha was believed to be living in the monasteries with the monks, right? And he was not only believed to be living in the monasteries with the monks, but he was also the owner of the property. So many of the endowments of the villages, you have the famous 5 villages being given. So many of the endowments or properties which are given to the monasteries are given directly in the name of the Buddha. And Buddha is accepting gifts and donations also we have. So this is a very peculiar setting in what we call monumental history, where belief and architectures intersect, and how intangible and tangible also come together in telling histories of heritage. And there were special officers also appointed, which are called Gandhkuti Varikas. Not only here, but also, as I said, in Bagh caves and also in Ajanta caves, who were supposed to look after that and transact business on Buddha's behalf. And there could be many Gandhkarikas of separate monasteries at the same place. They would have official correspondence with each other, and they'll deal with other monasteries as well. So it is a very different conception of a monastery that is coming up, something which dwells with the living presence, something which is basically vibrates with the living presence of the Buddha. And with that, I come to my third frame. And my third frame, as I said, these are just windows, basically. Though I don't have the time, otherwise I would have loved to go into the details. My third frame is about the extent and boundaries of the Mahavihara, its relationship with the surroundings, and what remote sensing tells about it, basically. Now, when you talk about the recent remote sensing surveys, basically, Surbhi says 5 minutes, give me 6, So what they tell you about the, we have monasteries, basically, is that, it was not just, the monastery did not have, basically just limited to, the excavated enclosed site. This excavated enclosed site is basically the site where you have, where you entry allows us by the ticket. But what the extended archaeological surveys and satellite imageries have thrown is that around the monasteries when you go, then you say 2 or 3 very distinct things. One is it is surrounded by tanks, like Diggi Pokhar or, Indra Pokhar, Diggi Pokhar, there are lots of pokhars or talabs are there. I saw that in the campus here as well, which means that it is also sitting going or following the precedent of other Buddhist sites like Sanchi, like Anuradhapura in Sri Lanka, or Thotla Konda, where, the Buddhist sites are surrounded by water bodies. Right? Not only that, there are 2 more temples which have been discovered further north of Temple 14, which is towards, Bargaon, Surajpur side. And 1 temple towards the south of the famous, what is known popularly as the Sariputra Stupa. There are 2 more monasteries which have also been discovered beyond the row of monasteries towards, Kardigya, Muzaffarpur, Indra Pokhar side, basically. So this is it. What it is revealing is a much bigger complex, and we are also scholars encouraged used to think in terms of that the monastery had a relationship with the surroundings, which provided good services to the monastery, right? They also talk to you about that they had relationship with the surrounding monasteries, which is Odantapura, about which not much is known, the Yashovarman at Ghorsavan and the Telhara monastery or Tilhadaka. It also had a sculptural relationship with the sculptures which are found in the surrounding, which is like Ghosravan, Tetravan, Bargaon, Jagdishpur, Surajpur, Begaon. And they also suggest that it has some kind of an artistic linkages with Rajgir, which Pavapuri, with Kundalpur. So it had a much bigger, thing there, basically. So that is where, basically I'm looking at, where did it go? Sorry. And my 4th frame is something, I talk about a sculptural representation, which was there in her presentation, Elora's presentation, which is a particular representation of Buddha, which is a Buddha surrounded by 8 scenes of life of the Buddha. So there is one central Buddha. I'm talking about one image in particular. There's one Buddha, you saw her in her presentation, who's surrounded by 8 scenes, or which came to be known as 8 Ashtamahasthana. Now, what does this image signify? And this image has been found in, this is the famous Jagdishpur image, Buddha image, which is the Rukmini Haran Sthan. It is found in the museum that you're planning to renovate. And it is found in the miniatures, stone images that have been found in the monks, cells in the monasteries, basically in the ruins. Now, what does this signify? 8 scenes mean 4 scenes which are principal events of the life of the Buddha, which Buddha himself advocated. That go to those places where I was born, where I attained my enlightenment, where I had my first sermon, and where I died. Now, over a period, 4 other sites, get added to that. Shravasti, Sankissa, Vaisali, and Kapilvastu. These are the places where Buddha performed miracles. So what is this coming together? Now, it would be wrong to say that, these images were not happening earlier. These images were occurring earlier, but not all of them in one image. Right, so you have, Kushana period representations of this 8 great signs, but for the first time it comes in Sarnath and becomes very prevalent here in Nalanda. So what it signifies is, and there was a cult going around it in the later Pala period, which is called the Ashtamahasthana Pratiharya, which means basically that there was a cult, and which cult at some times travel used to become very difficult to all these 8 places. So if you have an image in front of you, which has all the 8 great places, it is deemed as a kind of a pilgrimage. So you're taking a virtual pilgrimage. So seeing is, experiencing the pilgrimage. My 5th frame is a small one, basically, which talks about the Southeast Asian connections. Now, we know about Southeast Asian connections through the stucco art, which is, has said to have, influenced the Thailand stucco art. The bronze art, which is basically the Malaya Peninsula, the Southeast Asian countries, and things like that, And there are monks traveling of monks and relics as well. Now, one of the things I noticed, which was very peculiar in one of those descriptions of Vaijing, is that, when he says when he was traveling to Nalanda, he stayed at Srivijaya, which is Sumatra, Indonesia, basically, and learned Sanskrit for him to come and understand what was going on in Nalanda. And while going back, he goes back again to Srivijaya, spends 6 months again there, to consolidate the knowledge he has. So how interestingly these figure into in terms of intellectual exchanges, these networks and these habitations, of Buddha, and through the, thing about Nalanda. My 6th frame is about, basically about later period at Nalanda. Now, much of the later period at Nalanda, which is basically, from, if you say around 7th to 11th or 12th century, we talk about periods of cataclysmic decline, basically, right? But this is also a time when the sacred space is getting reconfigured. And one in which Buddha is reinventing himself. Buddhism is reinventing itself, not Buddha, but Buddhism is reinventing himself. And this happens in 2 ways, I'll just take 2 minutes. This happens in 2 ways. One way is basically through the, assimilation. There are contestations, of course, but assimilation and blurring of boundaries between different religions, like, Hinduism, Shaivism, and Vaishnavism. In Vaishnavism, as you know, that, Buddha was seen in the, as an avatar of Vishnu, basically. And this is something which is very apparent at the Rukmini Haran Sthan. And the other one was Shaivism, was Buddha is seen as, a kind of a tantric form of Shiva, basically, and where you see it, as the, as at the Black Buddha or the Telia Buddha, where he's worshipped as a form of Shiva, basically. So that is there in terms of that. Bhairav, Bhairav as a specifically, more specifically Bhairav. And the second one is the emergence of Vajrayana, or the Tantricism, basically, which explains why do you find images like Taras, Trilok Vijaya, Marichi, Heruka, which also explains this assimilation of boundaries. Why do you find images of Hindu gods and goddesses within the Mahavira complex? And my last, which I'll take just 1 minute frame, is the frame about museumization of Nalanda. Now, 19th century, Nalanda was one of the key spots on the top of the archaeologists, basically. And it also was having an energy from the West, which said that, their idea was to establish a historical Buddha. So Nalanda, Bodh Gaya, Rajgir, these become very hot spots. And when they were doing their excavations, what they were doing is that they were classifying the objects so obtained, the artifacts, as sculptures, as art objects as opposed to objects which were part of the sacred tradition. And in the process, many of those objects, this thing were removed from temples and kept in museums. And these museums or exhibitions were mainly to showcase these sculptures as examples of Buddhist art. And from museums, and I'll end there, it was not just one museum. So if you look at A.M. Broadley's connection, he was the, district magistrate district collector of Bihar Sharif. He collected many, things in his backyard. From there, it went to Indian Museum. From there to Bihar Museum. So it kept traveling between museums, sometimes going outside as well. Right? And then from Bihar Museum, Nalanda Museum, also to Bihar Museum and to Delhi Museum in 1949. So Nalanda is not just about the enclosed ticketed area or the values that are there in this university. Nalanda is also about the surroundings. Nalanda is about the museums that you find in India and abroad. And Nalanda is also about habitations and networks in Asia, in East Asia and Southeast Asia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing with us the relevance and the profound legacies and the brilliance of time from the ancient land of Nalanda. I now call upon Anshuman Mathur, the research scholar at the ongoing Rajgir excavation, speaking on demystifying Nalanda of yesterday to envision Nalanda of tomorrow. Anshuman Mathur is currently working as a research scholar at the ongoing Rajgir excavation. He pursued Bachelor in History from the University of Delhi and further studied ancient Indian culture and archaeology and joined master's program in museology at the Banaras Hindu University. He has been associated with Archaeological Survey of India for post-excavations works like research and documentation. He is UGC Junior Research Fellow and in the process of commencing his PhD in the domain of museology. I welcome you, sir.
A very good afternoon to all the distinguished speakers of this enlightening session, honorable guests, and inquisitive students. Myself, Anshuman Mathur, and I am currently engaged as the research scholar at the ongoing Rajgir excavation. Due to hectic official engagements, Dr. Sujit Nayan, under whose directorship this excavation is going on, won't be able to join us. So it's an honor to be here for the 6th edition of Bodh Gaya Global Dialogue and put up some interesting inputs for archaeological enlightenment. Before beginning this presentation, I would like you to think like a child. Have you ever wondered what lies just beneath this ground, in a village just right to the road of this university, in the nearby Rajgir market, near Nalanda ruins, near the museum, or on the ground of Kila Maidan? Yes, we are in Nalanda, but of which magnitude? It is only what you see, or way bigger than our imagination. Being part of great Magadh Mahajanpada, epicenter of a way of the life called Buddhism, proud campus of then great Nalanda University, it's natural to think, was Nalanda only this much? Well, we should not think so, because today, we will try to demystify some of the excavated findings of various nearby excavated sites by Archaeological Survey of India and ignite a vision of Nalanda for near tomorrow. So I would like to start my presentation with the famous saying by Dalai Lama on Nalanda, that the source of all the Buddhist knowledge we have has come from Nalanda. Indeed. So, as a brief, Nalanda is located in the middle Ganga Valley, surrounded by Patna, Gaya, Nevada, and Jahanabad districts of Bihar, reported by Francis Buchanan in early 1800s and identified by Alexander Cunningham. Broadley did unsystematic excavation at Chaitya Site 12 and published a monograph. Regular excavations were carried out at Nalanda by ASI from 1915 to 16 to 1935-36 for nearly 2 decades, and during 1974 to 82 under various archaeologists like John Marshall, D.B. Spooner, Hiranand Shastri, and J.A. Page. A large area was excavated having stupas, monasteries, shrines, temples, and other structures yielding a large number of sculptures and antiquities. Excavations lacked in study of stratigraphy, classification of ceramics, and minor artifacts and scientific dating. Remaining areas require fresh work to remove earlier delusions. Now, you can see these locations in the next upcoming slides because these names will keep coming. We have the sites like Jaufardi, Rukmanisthan, Begumpur, Damankhanda, Jagdishpur, Saraichak, Badgaon, Machhradih, Kul, Badari, Nanan, Kajrajbika, Ghoda Katora, and Rajgir. The green ones mentioned are the excavated sites by ASI in last 2 to 3 decades. And in this another map, in this Google map, you can see the tanks showing the water resources and the expense and surroundings of the Nalanda. In this map also, you can see the locations of excavated sites like Jagdishpur and the Jaufardi, Rukmanisthan, and Begumpur also. Now, Integrated Development Plan of Nalanda. Under the chairmanship of Professor Kishore Kumar Basa, Director General ASI, preparation of inventory on potential archaeological sites for the excavation by 2035 has been discussed in October 2023 recently. Excavated sites are delivering many archaeological evidences to connect the dots of Nalanda in toto. We have many problem-oriented archaeological works which needs to be taken into prime consideration, and extensive research work should be done. Questions are many, such as where is the entrance gate, boundary wall, library of the ancient Nalanda University. So, more excavation can deliver answers as per the plan and connect the previous outcomes. So for the phase 1, excavate Begumpur, Damankhanda, Badgaon, Jagdishpur, and Nanan for the determination of cultural sequence and its associations with ancient Nalanda Mahavihar under the Integrated Development Program of Nalanda Project. And later in phase 2, we can excavate Rukhaigarh, Dhurgaon, and Ghoda Katora also in much larger scale. Now in this, you can see a kind of catchment area of Nalanda in radius of up to 25 kilometer. In 5-kilometer radius, you can see excavated sites of the key sites like Begumpur, Jaufardi, and Rukmanistan, etc. To understand the surroundings of Nalanda, it is necessary to look and correlate the findings of excavated sites in the vicinity. ASI has extensively explored 13 sites adjacent in the proximity of Nalanda ruins, which were closely associated with the ancient University of Mahavihara. Out of 13 sites, 4 were excavated: Jaufardi, Begumpur, Damankhanda, and Rukmanistan. Ghoda Katora, another important site, also helps us to find the gateway of Nalanda. All sites are not only associated with the ancient Mahavihara, but also prove to be a landmark in changing the present history of Nalanda Mahavihar. Now to shed more light on this, we will go through some of the peculiar details of those prominent excavations by ASI, whose evidences can be looked at for future interpretations by the fellow stakeholders for looking at Nalanda in more broader and clearer manner. So this is just the crux of the previously excavated sites in last 2 decades under various directors. These are Chandimao, Jaufardi, Begumpur, Damankhanda, Ghoda Katora, Rukmanistan, and the New Rajgir. We will see in the crux. This is the first site, Chandimao, the excavation done in around 2001. It is about 12 kilometers east of Silao. Several sculptural fragments were recovered from the agricultural fields, brought this site to the attention of the archaeologists. The excavation was carried out on a mound locally known as Tilhapar. Excavation revealed remains of the brick-built Buddhist temples and votive stupas on a brick-paved floor, which appears to be of the courtyard of the temple. 12 votive stupas were exposed. Good quantities of fragmentary circular bricks with a central hole were collected from the vicinity of these stupas. You can see in these photos the stupa and adjoining brick floor at the Chandimao. and the view of the excavated site. These are some Buddhist remains from Chandimao. Now, Jofferdi, it is an ancient mound located just 3 kilometers west of the ruins of ancient Nalanda Mahavihar. 2006-7 excavation done under the directorship of late S.C. Saran. It revealed that the site has been occupied first time in the Chalcolithic period. So the dating is going from 1600 BC to 100 AD till the from pre-NBPW to Shunga Kushana period. Now, this site is known as the birth and nirvana place of Mahamudgalyan, one of the chief disciples of Buddha. The site is not only important in terms of its historicity, but this excavation also proved to be a paradigm shift in understanding the Nalanda Mahavihar's chronological establishments, as we didn't have any antiquarian remains before the Gupta period. These are the views of Jofferdi, the Pradakshina Patha of the stupa. Now, the Jofferdi stupa is one of the earliest so far discovered in the Magadh region. A detailed examination of the stupa with the help of cutting across revealed 3 main phases of the construction. Its chronology can be seen in this tabular depiction, which is based on the dating provided by BSIP Lucknow. The date is going from 1600 BC till 100 AD. Now, Begumpur, it is situated 1.4 kilometers north from the ruins of Nalanda Mahavihar. There is a huge mound towards south of the village Begumpur. The dating is going from pre-Gupta period to late medieval period. These are the views of excavated site of Begumpur. It's noteworthy to mention that the proper entrance of Nalanda Mahavihar is yet to be traced. Moreover, most of the monasteries of eastern India like Vikramshila and Paharpur have its entrance from north itself. So the excavations of this mound will further include a new chapter to Nalanda. These are some of the antiquities, sprinklers recovered from the Begumpur excavation site. Next in the series is Damankhanda. It's situated at 1 kilometer north from the ruins of ancient Nalanda Mahavihar. The objective of this excavation was to mark out the extension of ancient Nalanda. Remains of Buddhist temples, fragmentary architectural and sculptural remains revealed in the excavation. The dating is from NBPW culture to 1200 AD. A terracotta ring well of the period 2 was found. In the period 3, remains of ramped floor of brick bats is traced. 2 miniature stone stupas are also exposed, as you can see in the photos, and the ring well and the floor at Damankhanda. These are some of the beautiful inscribed ceilings recovered from Damankhanda excavation and a base of votive stupa. Now, Damankhanda need to be excavated again due to the chance discovery of the boundary wall of Nalanda with brick on edge ghat leading towards the ancient Dryad reservoir. It is continuing towards the temple number 14 of the Nalanda protected site, as has been reported. It might have been continuing up to the temple number 3. Next in the series is quite far, but very near, the Ghoda Katora. It is near Giryak, situated 8 kilometers from Rajgir. Chronology is suggested from Chalcolithic culture to Pala period till 1200 AD. This is the view of the trenches near the Pachane river. A storage jar filled with caudies covered with lid also. Few sherds of glazed ware recovered from this upper level. You can see these storage jars in the trenches. And there is a storage jar with a hoard of caudy shells from Ghoda Katora. Some stone sets and iron objects, sculptural fragments, the copper objects. Now, next in the Rukmini Sthan, mound at Rukmini Sthan is situated about 2 kilometers southwest of the ancient ruins of Nalanda Mahavihar. The mound of Rukmini Sthan was excavated to ascertain its relation with the nearby ruins of Nalanda Mahavihar and to know the cultural sequence of the site. The excavation revealed structural remains that could be assigned to the 2 cultural epochs, Gupta, post-Gupta period, and the Pala period. This is the monastic cells at Rukmini Sthan. A special mention may be made of some terracotta ceilings, which are quite significant from this site. As you can see, the ceilings and some sculptural fragments of stone. Now coming to the Rajgir, the ongoing excavation site. Okay. The Rajgir is in close proximity with Nalanda and supposed to be of the major town of Nalanda. The multifaceted fortification town of the new Rajgir is said to have been built by King Bimbisara Ajashatru. The old Rajgir city is encircled by a stone fortification wall. There is various size of walls with multiple networks. The walls are connected with bastions at all strategic points, and several times these walls were renovated. The most visible antiquarian remains of the Rajgir is its cyclopean wall, erected for the defense purpose by fitting huge irregular boulders together without the use of mortar. Similar type of walls have been constructed in various parts of the world during different periods. The most famous cyclopean wall of Mycenaeans is generally assigned to the 14th century and 13th century BC. This Mycenaean construction of wall is quite akin to the Rajgir cyclopean wall. Dating of the cyclopean wall and its network will also bear some remarkable answers. Now, the current excavation began last year in 2023 to procure its scientific dating of pre-NBP period, to know the settlement pattern extension of the site with nature of the rampart fortification wall. New Rajgir giving indication about the pre-NBPW antiquarian remains, which had never been found earlier. Terracotta ring well is also exposed, which is in similar pattern with the one found at nearby Ghoda Katura and some other antiquities also. So this is the view of the current site and the general views from the eastern side and the western side. In the ongoing excavation, a massive brick wall, which has been traced after vegetation clearance, now getting exposed. It seems that the stone fortification wall is constructed over the massive brick structure. There are two structures, the brick wall and the rubble masonry wall, which intersect each other. It seems that both the walls are used for defense purposes. The bricks are of pre-modern period, and in dimensions, they are 45 to 50 centimeter long, 25 to 28 centimeter wide, and 7 to 10 centimeter thick. Till the time of this paper, we are able to expose around 33 brick courses, which can be seen in the photos here. So this is a view of southeastern side of the site. So this is a brick wall visible after the vegetation clearance behind the bastion, which will be excavated soon later. Now, some cumulative evidences. These aforementioned excavations need to be studied so that a holistic understanding can be developed to underscore the expansion of Nalanda ruins. Terracotta ring wells at Damankhanda, Ghoda Katura, and Rajgir are of same style and pattern. Ample number of storage jars at Ghoda Katura points out to the inference that this could have been the great storage area for food grains to fulfill the daily dietary needs of the large population of the Nalanda or even the Magadh region. Walls of Rajgir and their networking pattern may point out to the gateways of Nalanda of that time. Chance discovery of the boundary wall of Nalanda near Damankhanda with brick-on-edge ghat leading towards the ancient dry reservoir is already demanding a fresh excavation, and it should be done in near future to see the continuity of the Nalanda ruins. So there were some other explored sites also, but due to paucity of time. The last thing, it can be argued that the area around Nalanda Mahavihar can be traced at least 1,000 years back from its present date due to presence of ceramics, antiquities, structures, etc. found from the recently explored sites, but concrete valediction can only be confirmed through excavations. Jofferdy excavation already added concrete evidences in this regard, and much more can be done to fulfill the said futuristic vision. Thank you so much. Thank you. I had to trim it down.
Thank you, Anshuman, for definitely learning from Nalanda's past. We can create a more inclusive, innovative Nalanda of tomorrow. I would now call upon Shri Shankar Sharma, Assisting Superintending Archaeologist, Archaeological Museum, Nalanda. He'll be speaking on ancient Nalanda University Mahavihara, historical glimpses from the archival records. Shankar Sharma is presently serving as Assistant Superintending Archaeologist in the Archaeological Museum, Nalanda. In his more than 2 decades of service, he has recognition of several important archaeological expeditions in ASI. Since a decade, he has been working for archaeological activities being carried out at sites of ancient Nalanda, Mahavihara, Rajgir, and Bodh Gaya. He was coordinator for mapping of archaeological sites scattered along the alignment of ancient Uttarpatha, Badshahi Sadak, Sadak-e-Azam, crossing through Bihar and discovered the Great Causeway in River Sone. Welcome you, sir.
So, very good afternoon to everyone. And my most respected guru, Professor Jaiswal sir, he is sharing this session. It is my great privilege that it is after 25 years that I am meeting with my guru. So, I am going to make a presentation. Only I'll show the glimpses of the core aspect of Nalanda, what was before its exposure, as many of the people, those are the lay visitors or the pilgrims or the research scholars are just going and moving in and around the Nalanda, but they don't know about what was in the core earlier before its exposure. So on this very theme, I'm going to talk. I have arranged certain slides after having several research work over the archival references. So without taking much of the time about the history and the settlement landscape, what was there, because it has already been discussed about the previous scholars, Dr. Shekhar Sinhaji, and in the previous paper, Ansuman has also made some discussion about this. So, what the presently scene of Nalanda is on visible face. Only what you are seeing is only about of this face. But what was in core before its exposure, that is one of the most important aspects to understand the material evidence of Nalanda. So, this page has already been illustrated in the previous slides. So, just for your glimpse is that what is the present position of Nalanda. Yes, coming to the archival aspect of Nalanda, in this very map, it was sketched sometime by Alexander Cunningham prior to beginning of the excavation work. What he has made and plotted all sort of the settlement in and around the locality of Nalanda University. And before excavation, even the archaeologists, they have prepared its topographic feature in terms of the contouring of the site. So only from this feature, one can easily understand that what was the physical shape of Nalanda at the time when the first visitors went there. So after the funds contributed by the Royal Asiatic Society of the Great Britain, it was D.B. Spooner who just started the excavation work at the site. So this is of 1916 years features. And after getting this a specific type of terracotta still, which has certain reference, the name of Nalanda, in which it is mentioned that the Sri Nalanda Mahabihar Riyari Bhikkhu Sanghasya. Otherwise, the archaeologists and the historians were in very much dilemma that where is the ancient Nalanda University that is vividly referred by the Fensang and in the later Chinese visitors' accounts. Because in this very locality, there was two large mounds, one at the Bargaon and another was located at the present Bihar Sharif area. So the people were in dilemma that which one is the ancient Nalanda University. But after getting this very specific seal, it has finally confirmed that no, this is the site that was representing some time of the ancient Nalanda University. So people had just started documenting the entire ruins. Just one can imagine that what was the position after its end in terms, just by the historical reference we know about at the end of the 12th century. So it is about next 700 years when archaeologists just started carrying out their expedition for its exposure. So what was the time for these 700 years? So in these 700 years, what happened to this particular site? Only it is can be understand from these photographs. The man standing is D.B. Spooner, who is carrying out excavation at one of the temple site too. And after its exposure, this was the feature of temple site too. Although we know that at the end of 12th century, all the entire things has got just vanished, and there was no further continuation. But from the archaeological digging and from the archaeological layer, we know that no, even in the earlier time, in the 7th century or in the 8th century, there is the layers of destruction, and there is certain material evidence that proving the destruction activity. So one can see, visualize from this slide also. This is the landscape. It was taken during 1919 from the highest mount, that is Temple Site 3, and this is just covering the entire locality, including the museum area in the area where so many banyan trees are there. So after exposure, it has taken beginning from 1915 to 1983. So one can understand about more than 150 years of expedition was carried out for its excavation. And in this phase, we have found revealing of 11 major monasteries and 6 major temples within the complex. Otherwise, if you will include the map that was made by Alexander Cunningham during 1871-72, then we can understand that even the monastery or the university dimension was larger than the present exposed area. So this was the very first hand photograph before excavation of Temple Site 3. And what we found after its excavation, this is the code drawing after excavation. It was made during 1926-27. So in the core, we found traces of a stupa, a rectangular stupa belonging to the 3rd century BC. It was just started on the basis of the typological material, and it was again covering during the 1st century BC. It may be the culturally belongs to the Sunga dynasty, again of the same stupa, and it was the Kusana time. Again, they have also identified the same location, and they have also encased the similar thing. And again, it was in the Gupta period. So since moderator has warned me, so just I'm going to show the glimpses of the core aspect of Nalanda. So you can see only. So as Dr. Elora was earlier saying about the Bodh Gaya souvenir model, so we have also such type of model in Nalanda in bronze. So we can also think about this, that this may be perhaps for the Temple Site 3, the same model. This is after excavation. of 12, temple site 12. This is before excavation. And here at the entrance, what was the position in monastery number 1? Only from this archival view, one can understand and what is the present position. So even in every occupational level, they have left all the things. Here the drainage outlet, what was the provision for the drainage outlet? That is just giving imagination about the different cultural occupational layers. After getting records, archival records in 31 volume of archives during the Corona time, I have utilized one of the best time of my life for documenting and digitizing the entire photographs. It is about 1473 photographs which I have documented, and it is that outcome only that I am making this presentation before you. These all photographs from the same albums. So this is the Magadh image. Just I'm going very hurriedly down. Yeah, okay. So what was the restoration process there? They were simultaneously making brick at the same time with the similar identical size of a particular type of a structure. So these are the view of the same things. So these are providing the authenticity and integrity of the sites. Okay, so this is another view. Just see only the glimpses. Never will get chance to see this type of photograph because this is the first hand. Just you see how a class, how the three images, the people just hiding. Just to see, I'm not going to make more discussion, just see the glimpses. They will tell its own narration. Even the charred grains, rice, and charred wooden railings is also preserving in the museum. And recently we have discovered in one of the Dehar Pokhar pond, a classical phase of the ghat, bathing ghat, although we have vividly referred by the Chinese traveler account about how the peoples and the monks were gathering around the ghats. And this is the murals of Nalanda. And this is the recent finding, okay, from Sarai Mount. These are the recent finding from Sarai Mount. One inscription with the name of the donor as well as the sculptor. And this is the Nagdevi image. This is the last day photograph when Aurora was also there. Now it is not on the place. And we have also some collection of the coins which have been recovered during excavation. 54 coins, Sasanian coins, the Gupta gold coin, Kumar Gupta, and Gomi Chandra Deva coin, and Sasanka. And with this enlightening features, due to paucity of time, if you will give more time, then I can only arrange some better things. Thank you very much, even for giving your attention. Thank you very much.
Towards the end. Yeah. Thank you, Shankar Sharma ji, for your presentation, which serves as a reminder of the importance of preserving our cultural heritage while embracing change and progress. So, the last speaker for today, Dr. Tosa Banta Pradhan, will speak on tracing Rajgi's sacred spaces and early habitation pattern through recent archaeological explorations. He's a teaching fellow at Nalanda University with a PhD in archaeology from Deccan College, Pune. He did his postdoctoral research from IIT Gandhinagar and Flinders University, Australia, and second postdoc from the Indian Institute of Science Education and Research, Mohali and Tel Aviv University. He has over 10 years of teaching and research experience, having worked at various institutions in India, Africa, and Europe. At Nalanda University, he teaches courses on history and archaeology, prehistory and proto-history of South Asia, birth of civilization in Asia, historical archaeology, digital humanities, and history of Indian science and technology. I welcome you, sir.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Esteemed Chairperson, Professor Joshua, all the esteemed guests and the scholars, faculty members, and also the students. So I'm going to speak about my presentation. So by the time the presentation starts, let me give you a very brief background to the Rajgir. So Rajgir, we know that it was a city of eminence, and then so open it. We know that because the epitome of the urbanization it was started in Rajgir. We have two cities. One is the old city, another one is the new city. The old city was in between the hills, surrounded by the 5 hills. And then later on, what we find is the city, or the capital city, was shifted to just outside the hill. That is called the new city, or that's the Ajatasattu Killa, or the Ajatasattu Fort. Now, what is interesting actually about the Rajgir itself is that, as the city was also growing, the number of, the religious places were also keep on increasing, because, it was the center of, for the monks, it was obviously for the Buddhist monks, also for the Jain monks, and obviously also, as the city was there, it was not a place for only one religion. So there are many even Hindus, sculptures are there, monuments are there. And then what also we find is in the later time period that also we have the Sufi saints that came, and then what we see here in the Rajgir is the Mugdam Kund, and even the Sikhs came, and then what also we have seen that the Gurudwaras are built in Rajgir itself. So it was a place for actually the amalgamation of many religions, and over the time we have witnessed many different religions and the different parts of the city itself. So I'll not go to basically all the details. So just to give you a glimpse that it is surrounded by the 5 hills. So this is the part of the old city, and then what also we have seen that why this place was become so popular. The reason being is actually we have the hills, there are forests, there are caves, there are hot spring, cold spring water, there are river, streams around Rajgir, and then also it was surrounded by the very good agricultural land, and then also and this was supported for the beginning of the earliest Magadh capital city. And then what also we have seen is that over the time period, we have seen the many different type of archaeological remains. There is the remains of the stone fortification wall, there are remains of the mud fortification wall in the form of the old cities, there are monasteries, there are temples, there are stupas, there are rock-cut caves, there are ancient pathways, there also the root marks are there, then also there are many modified caves are there, and also there are many water bodies. What you exactly see here is just to show you a geomorphology of the Rajgir, and you can see the surrounding area is plenty of water bodies. Now this is just to show you the location of the old city and the location of the new city here. So this is what the old city is, surrounded by the hills from all the areas. So it was very secure from the different side, and then it was fortified by the Cyclopean wall on the top. And then what exactly we find that they're shifting the capital to the new areas with a new infrastructure, and then it's coming up with more urban settlement or the urban planning. Now, if you talk about the literature, I think Rajgir is one of the places in India having the most cited in both the Hindu literature, in the Buddhist literature, and also in the Jain literatures. And then we know that extensively also we find the references in the Chinese traveler, whether it's the Fayan or it is the Zhuangjiang or the Huansang about the Rajgir. And this is what also actually led to the discovery of the Nalanda, because there is a very clear-cut geographical descriptions about Rajgir in his account. Now just coming to talking about the prehistoric, the sacred space, we find actually, the caves are there. So the
Beyond India, it is a very popular religion, as our Honorable Governor today talked about Thailand, and he said that they felt that it is not the relics of Lord Buddha, but Lord Buddha was present in that relic. And so they had so much veneration for Buddhism and Buddhist creed. One thing which I would like to say, which has not been mentioned as yet, why Buddhism became so popular. We must ponder over it. During 6th century BC, there were 63 religious preachers, as mentioned in Digha Nikaya. Out of these 63, most important became Ajivikas, for whom Ashoka and his grandson Dasrath donated, first got excavated and then donated Barabar caves, Lomas Rishi Gufa, which is very popularly known. Then Jainism, and after that Buddhism. All of the three, which became very widely known, not only throughout India, rather outside India also, they had one common thing, that all the religions, all these three religions, were based on rationalism. There is no religion in the world, to my mind, as far as I have read, which proclaims that Buddha says his disciples that don't accept my words unless you test it on your mind. If it suits or if it comes in your estimation as appealing and correct, then accept it, otherwise don't accept. I think, to my mind, there is no religion in the world which says that after testing it on touchstone, if it is correct, you accept it, otherwise reject it. So this rationality of Buddhism appealed large masses, and that is the reason that Buddhism is still surviving not only in few parts of India, rather in Southeast Asian countries. In Buddhism, Buddha says that everything is momentary and nothing remains forever. And for this version, he gives us a very interesting example that if you go into river to take bath, and if you enter into the river at 6:30 and come out at 7 a.m., and you say, or you rather claim that I have taken bath for half an hour in particular river, have you ever thought over it? That at 6:30, the atom of water which touched your body, that went away several miles away, and at 7 a.m., the atom which is touching your body, that is keep it. That is, say, an atom that may be thousands and thousands of, in comparison to the first one. So, with the naked eye, we don't see. But this is the reality, that a river doesn't stay even for a second, or rather the flow of the river doesn't stay for a part of the second, but that is going on. That is the life. So, nothing is transitory. At the same time, Buddha proclaimed that everyone has the capacity to become a Buddha. There is no written document that one can become Lord, other can become slave. Nothing. If you follow the Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, you can also become Buddha. Similar is with Jainism. That Lord Mahavir said that every man has the capacity to become Jin or Jan, who got Kaivalya Gyan. So, these religions, which are based on rationality, which is based on rationality, that was the cardinal principle of their success, and that is why that is still surviving not only in India but outside India also. First thing. The second part which I would like to touch on archaeology, which a friend of ours just mentioned as a comment. Rajgir's archaeology has been talked, has been tested, no doubt, from different angles. And the last presentation, which was Dr. Toswanta Pradhan, very nicely he presented his paper with illustrations. But actually, I also felt that history of Rajgir, or rather archaeology of Rajgir, has been untouched because in Rajgir, rather it has been a center of different religions right from very beginning. But what was the beginning? If we start from, say, Ajatasattu or Bimbisar, or that dynasty is called Haryankul, if we start from there, that is not the beginning. If we go through Atharvaved, you will find a mention about the Vratyas. And Atharvaved period is 10th century BC. There is no mention of Aryans at that time. First time Aryan have been mentioned in 7th century BC, or rather 8th century BC, say, in Satpat Brahman. And there is a clear-cut difference of 200 years when Aryans did not come in Magadh. Then, what was the archaeological evidence of Magadh between these 2 years or before Aryans? That has not been touched, or that is not even touched by many scholars, many historians. Atharvaved mentions of Vratyas, who were residing in this area of Magadh, particularly Rajgir, and Vratyas were responsible for building such a huge wall which runs nearly for 40 miles from this end to that end. And that is probably the earliest human-made wall in whole of world. Even before that, no trace has been found elsewhere. One thing which we don't discuss, this Cyclopean wall and its antiquity and archaeology. Recently, I read in local paper 2 days back that Archaeological Survey of Patna has started in between the wall again excavation, and there probably Ajatasattu palace part has been found. That's good. But they should go beyond even that, and they should find out the archaeology of the Cyclopean wall. So friends, I am emphasizing that Cyclopean wall, which is credited to Vratyas, because by that time Aryans did not reach here, and the rut on the stone, which has been, I'm concluding, just 1 minute. Just it is lying there, that has not been discussed or discovered by anyone who got it. But it is of course old, and I am summarizing that there was a very powerful Vratyas who controlled over all these areas before coming to Bimbishar, or rather Haryankul, which is called. They were here and they contributed a lot to this area, which must be recognized and discussed. With these words, I am again thankful, and especially thankful to the organizer, Sanjay Kumar, Dr. Sanjay Kumar Singh, because his consistent efforts to organize such a massive and wonderful academic and educative seminars every year is highly praiseworthy, and I have not found, I also attend at different places, seminars, symposia and discussions, but I have not found parallel to Sanjay Kumar's organizing capacity elsewhere. So I wish that in future also he will be organizing such type of seminars, which is very educative, very academic. With these words, I again thank all, especially to Sanjay Kumar. Chaliye, thank you. I'm very much humbled by your kindness. It has been mine. Please.
Just wait. There are two announcements. Of course, the first announcement, we will have to arrange the lunch for the speaker and the guest at cafeteria. So I would like to invite having lunch for the cafeteria, the speaker and the guest one. The next section we are planning to start 3:15. And this session basically designated to the theme of Dharma, democracy,